Hangouts on air is live. Thank you for joining us today. Although it's kind of late, it's like, what is it? Almost 3 weeks after our first one.
Sure.
We're doing part 2 now. I've been on vacation, going to anime conventions and SakuraCon and stuff like that.
Wait, anime conventions and SakuraCon. So like more than one?
Well, nah, just SakuraCon, I guess. Anime convention. And just till now, we're holding part 2. But we got Nick with us who watches everything, so we can get
Who also went to SakuraCon too.
Get the rest of the titles cleared.
And walked around Japantown a little bit while someone else, didn't.
And then we have Sean.
I watch nothing. I'm a fake anime fan.
No, you're not fake. You're just like kind
very
of like,
picky.
Yeah, like kind of elitist, but not like elitist,
No, I'll take it. I'm elitist.
And then you have me, who just watches half of everything and never finishes anything.
No. You call yourself an anime fan, but you've like grafted towards the light novel manga side of things, but still proclaim anime fandom.
True. Anime is where I got started, so I've been reading too much books. I got to start watching more anime.
But oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So first up today, we're going to talk about this title. I like that transition. What is this? Koku?
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea what this is.
I like that stylish logo. I don't know if we talked about this the first time, but I was asking Nick, who saw all of it, and I've only seen like 3, maybe 4 episodes, something like that. Whether this show is worth watching, and then we got to talking, and then I'm like, wait, I should ask him this live.
Yeah, and I think we just agreed that I'm just going to like spoiler the whole thing because you're probably not going to watch it. This was a series that I really looked forward to kind of each week, at least initially. I was really kind of taken in by this like series that, the gimmick of this show is time stops. The characters are doing something, there's a kidnapping involved. The grandfather goes, hey, wait, let's stop time. Well, he didn't actually say that, but time stops. And as they're walking around, it's kind of funny because they're like, how does physics work in this world? And the grandfather's like, I don't know. I just know what knowledge was passed down to me. And it largely transitions into the story of there was another family that passed down knowledge of this time freeze world who was trying to pull one over on the protagonist family and luring them into this world in which time froze. And it's just the real world. It's not like an isekai thing.
Yeah, it's like a contemporary Japanese city. I'm not sure if it takes place in any particular city.
Yeah. They were just trying to basically gank the materials of the first family. And while I was initially very pulled into this, this is like right up my alley of, hey, this is like a perfect like sci-fi story that I love when anime does. And kind of early off, I felt like a pacing issue, kind of getting towards the middle. But it largely kind of solved itself. But I just can't honestly know how to rate this show based on the story that it kind of went to pass off, which was what I'm going to attempt to tell you right now.
Before we get to that, I do want to mention that this is based on a serialized novel.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's based on a light novel. I think this is one of these like real novel-based anime shows.
No, I kind of wonder what it would be like to read a story like this. That seems kind of crazy to me.
Yeah, so it kind of, like in my mind, it was a Noitamina show, but now I look it up, it's not a Noitamina show. But it sort of has that appeal to it that it's not really otaku-y, it's not light novel-y.
Yeah.
It's almost an adaptation of like an actual sci-fi novel.
Mm.
Can you remind me what, like, they both have the stones that can stop time? Can you remind me like why one family is trying to take the other family's stone. Like if
It's like one of them
put the stones together, does something happen?
It's like the master stone, and the other one just like syncs with it, but it can't do what the master stone can.
Okay.
So like they want the one that they want that stone, and they want the grandfather's knowledge of how to use it so that they can achieve their goals in this time stop world. So this is a little bit convoluted because the world in which time stops is also enforced by people who go to this world and feel lost.
It's just a little bit convoluted.
This world and lost your purpose, you kind of get absorbed into it and become like this weird ashy looking referee demigod thing.
Yeah, the referee.
Yeah.
He just appears like when someone murders someone else in the frozen world, then the referee god appears.
Yeah, like that's like the only rule that it seems to exist is you can't murder anybody who is actually frozen in time. If other people are not frozen in time, you can absolutely inflict harm upon them, just no messing with this. And the story revolves largely about this family, just basically who went in initially to try to resolve a hostage situation, getting kind of wrapped up into this almost like a heist from this other family, because there's this guy who leads an organization. I actually blanked on the name of it. Yeah, it's a cult, but it's called like, I don't know, the Friendship or the Happy Smile. I don't know, like just some.
It's got one of those Japanese cult names.
Yeah, and he's actually into this world to figure it out. They have like a scripture that is taught to them as cult knowledge, and he wants to try to figure out, of this knowledge, like how was it derived? What is actually real? Like what are the actual rules? Or like, was someone just trying to come up with these rules because they believed it was right, or because those referees will come and get you? So he's kind of in there largely to figure it out. And he keeps running experiments. And one of the interesting things is he, I think his name is, it's like Sagawa, I believe. And it is his intent, I'm going to spoil early off here, to actually master the mechanic of becoming that demigod. Like he wants to become an entity while maintaining his consciousness to stay in that world and like not be human is kind of his thing. Because when they analyzed the scriptures that were passed down, they figured out it was written by the same person over a course of 500 years. And that's really what was his hook into this world. He was drawn into the being able to witness a time span way beyond a normal human's lifespan. He was kind of wondering what he could do to like throw away his own humanity to live beyond that of a human.
Okay. And that sounds like a bad guy thing to do.
Yeah, but largely he only tried to deal with people who was getting in his way. So partway throughout the series, a lot of the characters exhibited a special trait that only they had. The grandfather could teleport short distances. His daughter could, or his granddaughter, sorry, could upon touch, like knock the jellyfish, as they called it. It's like the being that you merged with to move in the stop time world. She could like eject that out of somebody, thus turning them into one of the stalled and no longer moving.
Yeah. So is it that she kicks them out of the frozen world?
Well, she just expels the entity from within them that enables them to move. So essentially, yes, but like more specifically, it's also like that weird ghost-like entity is what she's really interacting directly with. At one point, one of the characters who's not a family member exhibits like the power to kind of not control physics, but as they do say, like time's technically not frozen. It's just moving at such a slow pace that it very well might as be frozen, because like they could spend their lifetime frozen in time and not much they would perceive the change. But her ability was to kind of like interact with, normally when you grab something like a person, you pick them up and you move them. If you grab an object, you kind of have to, like for people who wanted to drink or eat hot food, they couldn't really interact with the world to warm it up. They had to like literally go gank hot food off people's tables or whatever just to eat. And to drink, they had to like move water around. Like if you wanted a soda, you had to uncap the soda, and almost like an astronaut in space, kind of like move it in such a way where the water gets removed from the container, or the liquid, I should say, and then they drank. And like that's a lot of the stuff I was watching this for. Just them having, anime having fun with this mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
And then it kind of got into that story of what Sagawa's master plan was to, become a sentient referee who wasn't lost and purposeless, but it got weird. I'm sorry, I forgot I was saying that the one girl's ability who's not related to the family, I can't really remember her that well, was she could walk on objects as though they were actually frozen in time. Like most times people would go and grab something and it would just move, like they exerted weight over it. She could kind of like interact with it in such a way where it stays frozen in time, and she can walk on it without physically affecting it. Was her kind of power. And then the youngest member, the son of one of the grandfather's sibling, or no, one of the main protagonist's sisters, so it would like be her niece or nephew, exhibited the power to influence the referees. Like he could literally like suggest them to do something and they would respond. So he kind of gained the ability to control these weird beings.
So what I've seen of the show is like a series of chase scenes between I don't know, good guy family and like evil henchmen from the weird cult.
Yep, and that's largely what it was until the very end, when Sagawa was near completing his goal of mastering, becoming that referee being, as I'm just going to call it. They called it something specifically, but as we said, we're kind of coming into this late. It's been a while. It was actually one of the shows that finished much earlier than the others. But it kind of got into this point where, upon recognizing how reckless this one character was for his single-minded pursuit of making sure that nobody could mess with him learning this world and becoming this referee, the granddaughter breaks the Master Stone, which is most everybody's only way to get back into the real world, except they're like, no, wait, she can still like physically force people out, anybody except herself. Was kind of like what the story hinged to. So in order to circumvent Sagawa, they break the Master Stone. The grandfather's kind of torn because, he wants his granddaughter to not remain locked in the stasis world. And essentially,
that's kind of bleak.
Yeah. And so they end up fighting Sagawa, is kind of what happens in like literally the second to last episode. And they, using everybody's powers combined / the various quirks of being frozen in time, they actually put him on the defensive, to which a weird thing happens. And this is where like I'm like, okay, this is the ending now. Like most of the story was convoluted, cat and mouse game between the one society and the one family, powers happening, referee stuff, the guy messing with the world. But now here's the resolution. So they are actually pushing Sagawa to the brink of death. And it seems that outside of his abilities, there's a mechanic that activates to try to preserve his life. And that was like a weird thread cocoon formed around what was left, because they stabbed him at some point and he was like physically dying. Formed around what was left of him, started stringing to any nearby source of nutrients and started absorbing nutrients. And these strings were actually kind of crazy because they were like like thread thin, as though you were trying to look at a spider, not a spider's web, but have you ever seen like a spider had to move from one tree to another, so he just had that one line that he extended, and you know how hard that one line is to see as it waves around. They had trouble seeing these lines, and if you went to cross one of them, they were practically razor sharp in this frozen physics world. So like just pushing your hand against it would like slice off fingers and stuff, and like you had like no immediate like pain feedback, so they kind of had to figure out how to move about this conundrum as this being was recovering. And it was later found that he wasn't necessarily recovering to be himself. The world's physics literally was like using his leftover residual dying off cellular data to remake a new life form. So it like reincarnated the character immediately into an infant when they eventually got to the cocoon. And a lot of the characters weren't sure what to do with him because, you know, the one character was supposed to return everybody, but until some resolution was achieved, some people were sticking around. And what eventually they figured out to do was everybody except the grandfather and the granddaughter would leave this world. So she ejected everybody except, you know, the grandfather, the daughter, or the granddaughter herself, who can't eject herself, and this infant, who they say, you know, this process of expelling this jellyfish, as we're going to call it, is physically like not demanding, but like there's a physical kickback on the actual body. So they're like, we kind of want this infant to grow to a certain age where it might be safe to eject this jellyfish.
So they're going to raise it in the frozen world? That's crazy.
So they're going to raise it in the frozen world. Oh, and one thing I actually forgot to mention that I figure is a little bit important. The girl who could physically interact with the frozen world and like not move stuff about, her purpose for being there was her family ended up by accident, because they were like near the one of the stones somehow, some way. Her family got sucked into the frozen world when the grandfather needed to show the granddaughter at like a long time, like she was young. So like both these two characters were young. Her family ended up becoming lost in this world, like lost as in they devoid of purpose, and her young brother about her age and her two parents became the referee beings. Her goal for being in that world was to have Judy, the granddaughter, and I'll just stop calling her the granddaughter, to expel the referee beings to try to get her family back. And like that was kind of a trip, because you got to see as they were referees, like how they were being drained, as like a lot of times they would look mummified when, you know, the parents especially came out of it, her younger brother, and a lot of the people who were technically referees like before. One of the things Sagawa was messing with, I know I'm all over the place and I'm sorry, is what happens when you run out of referees? Like, you know, what if we can push them out, therefore no one is a referee anymore? Can you then kill the frozen people if nothing was there to stop you? Was like one of his points from being in this world too. But anyway, like you know, it was really cool, like just watching him figure it out. And now, so back to what I was saying, Judy is now raising this infant with her grandfather after they figured out, like, you know, they somehow verified, I'll just withhold that a little bit for right now, that Sagawa does not have his memories intact. He is, you know, basically been reincarnated into an actual infant. No memories. Like everything that was his being was literally broken down and formed into this life form. So it's almost like a clone, more so than you know, him being returned to that state. Anyway, like they spent a fair discussion trying to figure that out.
Did he become a god though, or is he just like a normal human baby?
At that point, a normal human baby.
Okay.
He was kind of demigod-y at some point, but like they couldn't figure out why that cocoon thing happened, and it largely turns out to they didn't truthfully know if that state that made it, that broke him down into that, you know, reincarnated life form, was technically his own will or not. Like it could be some weird rule of the world. Like they don't have a way to prove it because no one else is going to go and try it. But so Judy at one point, right, literally,
I hate to say it, but I gotta go.
You're good. I'm nearly done. All
right. I'll talk to you later.
Sure. Judy expels the grandfather against his will in his sleep and raises the infant by herself. Once the infant reaches like the tender age of a year and a half, maybe 2, she expels the infant out of the world. After achieving that, she's kind of by herself at this point. She can't leave the world, like using her power on herself, and she doesn't really know what's going to happen to her. So a few days pass, she's keeping a diary about what to do, but she slowly starts succumbing to that mechanic of losing purpose and starting to transition into that referee-like being, to which, like, this is literally how the story ends. She's As she's about to turn into a referee, she gravitates towards this spiritual entity that she feels out there in this like plane of existence. As she gravitates towards it, she actually brings that person into the stasis world, and that person ends up being someone who was literally born with one of these jellyfish like beings inside of them at birth, and they always had the ability to freely transition between this world and, you know, the physical time progressing world. She exhibits many more abilities, like the ability to allow physics to happen in this world in a controlled space. You know, she takes a smoke break at one point, and goes on to say that one of her original boyfriends was the guy who originally wrote the scriptures for the cult. And although he lived like somewhat beyond 500 years, you know, he eventually, that like was his limit. He died, and she's been kind of alone to roam this world at an like I don't know, like there's like this fountain of youth effect that's applied to her. Like she doesn't really age anymore. She reached this age and then she stopped aging, and she is like, this world is kind of like her domain, and you know, she has fun with it as she will. But she points out that the husband, or not the husband, but her old boyfriend, actually was the one who made the stones. He had to like kill this entity that wasn't a jellyfish. It kind of looked like one of the soul dragons from various anime and manga Japanese lore. And upon killing them, he was able to obtain the material to make the stones. But since she has like full understanding and control over this world she's always interacted with her whole life, past like a millennia of time, she literally just boots Judy out of this world. And, you know, she goes back up and meets with her family, and the story kind of ends there. And it's like, whoa. like what a way to end that.
So would you say this is worth checking out?
I mean, if you heard my whole explanation, it's kind of pointless at this point. Because you kind of, like, if you want to see that all unfolding in a way that it actually makes sense, because I didn't, like, sit down and think about how to explain the story. It was just, like Sean kind of said earlier, we just decided to do it. It's a really cool animation project. It's not as gripping as something like the Subeteg F ni Naru, which is kind of like another story that was based off an actual book instead of, you know, a light novel or anything. It might have been a light novel, but I know it was like a murder mystery series that they just transitioned. Like, it's got a story to tell, and I'm actually a little bit more interested in how the story achieved. Like, you know, how closely does the book follow the anime? I'll never know. But while I personally like it, I'd say try it out. And you know, if it's something you start dragging on, doesn't, or like if you want to see the resolution, by all means, that's just I'm done. I don't know. I would love to recommend it, but at the same time, I don't feel it was a particularly strong anime, like, you know, deserving of like being a gateway title, or I like its concept. I like when Japan takes one of their stories that you don't really encounter a whole lot, and just tells it in a way that only anime can. I personally love that stuff, but if that's not you, then I can see why you wouldn't like this series. But I was actually going to look it up really quick just to see how people thought of it in general, and it actually got of the users who watched it, according to my anime list, it's got a 7.24 rating, so I mean, it's not terrible, but it's somewhat close to an 8, 7 1/4 there. But its popularity only achieved rank like 1,000, and yeah, like I could totally see that. So like of the people who watched it, they do seemingly seem to have liked it, but that's like a pretty niche viewing. Like, anyone who watched it, like I'm sure people who didn't bother watching it hasn't rated it. So yeah. I mean, I love it when anime does stuff like this. It's not a school story. It's very novel. So
All right. Well, let's move on to the next title. Let's see here. Up next, we have Tokunomi.
Takunomi.
I said Toku, huh? Takunomi. And you had something special to share with us with this title, right?
Yeah. So this is I know we ranked him early and Sean just couldn't stick around. I really wanted him to be around for this one too, just to hear his reaction. But long story short, this title in particular only existed to sell specific Japanese alcoholic beverages. It didn't largely focus on like generally what you can do with alcohol, like just take rum or vodka. It wanted to bring the brand name of a particular beverage in every episode is typically what this was tailored for. And if you were a Japanese viewer, it could entice the anime fandom at large to go out and try some of these drinks, as typically promotional anime does. Like we had another one from this season called Yuru Yuru Camp that Albert talked about, and he recently shared a post about how a lot of the venues that show showcased in its across its many episodes had up to triple the amount of traffic that they would normally see because this anime came out. And I would think that largely that would be true with this one, although I don't really have a way to validate Japanese alcoholic beverage sale to know if this anime did its job to advertise the various beverages that they talked about. But just to show you that this works, I was walking around a Japanese import shop one day, and I came across a can that I recognized. Like I'm like, I just watched that episode like last week, standing right there in front of me in this part of this grocery store. And it was part of like a 4-pack, and like each can was like $6. So yeah, it was kind of pricey, but I just felt compelled to literally buy the beer that it advertised. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I mostly did it because I live in America, and I wouldn't expect to see a product that an anime at large showcased. And I actually tried to find more. I was like, hey, if I found this one, what else can I go for? But the show largely didn't showcase too much of like a lot of mainstream product that would end up in just an import shop. So I'm actually not a fan of beer, alcohol at large. And this one was kind of aimed, according to the anime, for people who don't like beer. It's very light. It's a Belgian style white ale, and forgive me, I don't really know what that means. And Sean was actually with me when I found this thing, and he was literally compelled to buy one as well. And while he wrote up a review of it, so like he's like, Sean tries Japanese drinks, and he has a whole segment of that, his impression of what he bought amongst his various trips to this grocery store that he lives a lot closer to than me, I wanted to save this one for the talk, which I tend to do. You've seen me have many other products that characters like, and I bring that into anime talk.
Are you sure you don't want to take a drink so I can interrupt you in the middle of it?
Yeah, I remember you do that. Jesus. Yeah, I actually do want to. And in Sean's review, he called it a beer-flavored beer. And I'm like, I'm probably not going to be that, because like I was really sold by the anime. It's like even non-beer drinking people can get into this. It's so light. And they actually had a special glass in the episode that tulip style glass that I literally looked for. I almost bought, but I'm like, nah, I don't really want to buy this glass that I'm never going to use again. I'll just stop at the product. So
remember, be 21 years older to drink in the United
Japan,
States.
they actually, I know this because I watched every single episode. It's 20 or older in Japan, not in the US, which I totally am in. And I'm like 28, by the way, so I could like show my ID, but you know, I got this stuff. So as a non-fan of beer, I can totally say that if I had this from any glass, I would totally mistake this for like, you know, a Bud Light or whatever. Like it totally tastes like beer. I kind of agree with Sean. It's just beer. I don't feel like I want to go out of my way to buy at especially like $6 a can a bunch of those. But it did its purpose. It drove sales by bringing it into anime.
So is the show at least decent enough to watch, or?
It's a short, so it's only 13 minutes long, I believe, per episode. So, although not like the length of a 4-minute short, each like 2 episodes are about the weight of a normal show. So it's kind of like a half season in that sense. It's somewhat enjoyable because like the cast of characters, it follows a story of someone who moved from the country to Tokyo, and they really wanted to become a Tokyoite, someone who, you know, is so used to Tokyo, know the ins and outs of it, and is totally a city girl. And she moves into this house with like 3 or 4 other women who are over the age of 20, and it does focus on the character. Our main character, I just have to refresh my name. Her name is Michiru. Has a job at an office, and she's kind of becoming the, you know, office employed oriented kind of a person, and she really wants to do this office job well, and they point a lot of drama about her like being new to the company and wanting to be good at what she does and, you know, fashionable for the city, and like it totally gets into that vein. And the other characters also have their own personalities, and you know, it's fleshed out for the characters. Like this show tells a story alongside promoting beer. It's not just super solely focused on any one. So like literally half the episode might be a story of their daily lives, and then the other half is, hey, there's this beer, and like you literally still within the other half, here's like ways that we enjoy this product, and we recommend maybe other people to do so too. Like just amongst their antics, it's actually not like saying like this is, you know what I mean. They're all hanging out and having fun, drink. You know, they're not like a frat party or anything, but like many young adults who hit a drinking age, they just kind of hang out and share what they enjoy with their drinks, which I assume is somewhat popular in a lot of cultures. But like because it is half an advertisement and half a series, I can't really say I recommend anybody to go watch it, because number one, you're not going to have access to a lot of these projects. But if you're interested in seeing how anime can promote certain products alongside telling a story, like if that sounds interesting to you, check it out. If you're really not interested in learning about products you probably can't try, avoid it. Of the people who did watch it, they, you know, because it is not solely a story that makes the viewer feel good for watching it. Like it's not highly rewarding in the narrative that it does tell. It does not score so well.
All right. Next up, the title. Oh, there it is. Okay. Death March to a Parallel World. Rhapsody. So, actually, I finished watching this last night. I realized I didn't finish watching the last episode. And although I'll say I still hate Satu as voice acting and also the way they say his name sometimes. Overall, I'm not going to complain about it too much. I mean, it told the story and it was okay, but I was surprised to hear that the show's actually getting a lot of hate online for being animated poorly or something like that, or being really
crappy. Never mind. I thought it was just its isekai nature.
I don't know. I didn't read too deeply into a lot of them, but a lot of them are like cheap anime becoming the popular thing. So I'll probably read up on it a little bit later, see what it's all about. But I've been on vacation. I didn't want to go into all that stuff.
And I don't blame you for that.
So what did you think of the whole thing?
I actually did enjoy it, but that's because I do kind of like these stories. Again, I understand they're not for everybody. A lot of people, for every reason that you hate, like In Another World with My Smartphone, this series gets into that vein, but it's probably a little bit better. Just because of it's a little more, and I don't mean by any means that it is seinen, but it gets into that vein of, whereas like In Another World with the Smartphone was this kind of like almost gag comedy harem situation over power story. This story is just a tad bit more grounded, with a protagonist who realizes that he's kind of built a harem, but is also not condoning the fact that he's built a harem. He can ignore a lot of the characters that have developed affection for him. As bad as that sounds, but it always kind of like sounds prickish when you try to ignore people with their affections, but at the same time, if he was going like gung-ho into a harem and grabbing up everybody that he could, other people would have like more issues with the show. But ultimately, I watched it for its mechanics. I was interested in this character being pulled into another world that he kind of developed somewhat, and just slowly like learning like how it all happened. Because small spoiler, as you keep watching, you do find out that it's common knowledge that people end up in this world in one of two ways, and that's like either through reincarnation, like you have died and you've come over, or you literally get pulled into this world under the role of a hero. And those two mechanics are very specific. Like they only work those two ways. And Satu kind of acknowledges that he's kind of like this third case exception, where he's closer to someone who was pulled in as a hero, but like either something went wrong or something else happened, and it doesn't function the way that it should for him. And it does make him a bit more powerful, because he kind of has this like video game interface that exists before him, that all he has to do is think about to interface with, instead of like control via controller. But like I do like stories like that. So it was one of the titles that I literally looked forward to more so than a lot of the others on my list, just because I just wanted to see more of it tell its fable. And I'm not saying it's particularly good, but it just gets right into my vein of one of the reasons why I like watching anime.
The only thing I have about the isekai stories that are being becoming animes nowadays is that they all tend to be harem with lolly-esque characters. Like even the cell phone one was a lot of the 14-year-olds, 12-year-olds age range, and I think even in this one they were all pretty young still. Satu was
they're
probably around 16 years old as well.
Yeah, but like he also like was an older business guy, so like he acknowledged that although he looks younger, he's still like himself, and he has like all of his preferences from when he was moved over.
That's actually a joke I thought was kind of funny that recurs in a lot of light novels I've read, where they tend to think like I have the mentality of my previous life and this life, so I or I shouldn't be a lolicon. I shouldn't think of these girls because I have all this age. So they always tend to do that or have that kind of mindset that I can't be looking at her like that because technically, 42 now since I'm 16 plus my old life.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know if he ever I don't think he added it up that way in the anime, but I could see what you're getting at there. One thing that I will comment on about that though is this series kind of actually Japan likes coming up with exceptions all over the place. They kind of like selling a character like it's a little girl, but and then insert special case here. And that's like the explanation of one of I'll call the three lollies of the show, because two of them were like the animal characters, like the Kemono Mimi girls, who one was themed what cat and dog, I think, and they are actually young characters who aren't part of the harem. They're part of we like being a family with this guy, but like the love interest wasn't there. There was a character who was kind of around a little bit older than them who really, really liked Satu, and her reasoning for such was she was one of the reincarnated beings who, although she grew up from the young age of an infant to now, she kept all of her memories from her previous life. So that it almost like went on to tell a. Do you remember that anime, the Mao Yusha, I believe, or Mao Mao or something, where it had the one demon horned, red haired, extremely busty character who, although didn't have prior world knowledge, was advancing the world like through like printing press and like all the other stuff that the creator obviously just grabbed from our timeline and had this character come up with it. But this character was kind of doing the same thing because she was reincarnated and had memories of her past life. She was coming up with ideas, systems, and inventions that were far beyond her age, and that's kind of what got her burned into from royalty to like slavery. And although she does have this lolly body right now, she's still like has all the memories of like I forgot how old she was when she would have passed away, but like that is Japan's like but type of a character here.
I can't remember if they mentioned it in the anime, but in the web novel series that I read, she was also into Shotokan, so that's why she really enjoyed him.
That was not in the anime.
That's why she always liked him, because he was this young boy that she can now do stuff.
I don't know if that's quite Shota, but like I thought something else when you said that. Because I think in the series they explained it as she likes like I think like Japanese looking guys, where like that wasn't a theme. Like there was something like different about the character that was Satsu. Like I don't know if it was the hair color or something. Like there was something specific about him that she's like, oh, you're totally my type.
Yeah, I think in the book I read though, yeah, he was into Shotokans, and so she was kind of like he was kind of in that strike range and everything.
Yeah, because like the bad thing is she's kind of a promiscuous lolly, but at the same time she's a lot older than she really is. Not real. Like it's Japan being Japan.
Yeah. So. Just I wonder if they'll continue it and how far they'll go. Like I haven't read the light novels, so I don't know how far the light novel goes. And I don't know if they're just following that. But there's a lot of really funny reveals. And even in the manga, I think it's different from the book. But overall, it was decent, I thought. But I do kind of wish it was animated differently. It always seemed to have like some kind of mask over it that seemed make everything like hazy whenever I was watching it. It wasn't a clear picture to me every single time.
See, like sometimes I actually watch a show not for specifically the animation. Like it's very rare that I watch something for the animation. I'm more like interested in the story it's like attempting to tell. So I didn't particularly notice it with this one. Like, you know, there's sometimes a series will grab me just because of its awesome animation. You know, UFO Table has done like actiony scenes like that in the past. And while I did really like the story, it was also like easily notable in something like Violet Evergarden of the series that we covered 2 weeks ago. Like sometimes the art is just like that much better, and that sets it up like that raises it to another pedestal for me. But like, I mean, I watched Kemono Friends and had a good time with it, so animation quality is like not a must on my list.
Yeah. Well, I think because I already knew the content and knew what's going to happen, I tend to focus on other things.
I get
so,
you. Yeah, yeah.
I've seen plenty of shows where the animation wasn't really that great, but I liked it because the story was good.
Yeah.
So I think it's just I set up a lot of things that I thought should have been a certain way since I've already knew the source, and got a little bit disappointed. And I think I should stop. I shouldn't do that. I don't think I should just go in the open mind next time and be like, what are we going to see today?
That's usually how I watch like a lot of my stuff for the season. I just literally go in cold on all the episode ones and like see the message the first episode is trying to convey and like identify what type of story it's going to be and like, pick it up from there. And this season is not a good one for me, and I don't mean that like I haven't picked up much. I mean there's too much for me to choose from. Like I try to give myself a hard limit at like 34, 32, somewhere around there, and I think I'm going to blow way past that this season. I might hit 40, who knows.
So would you say this is an easily recommendable title?
I mean, ouch. I would kind of say yes, and because I know I would get a lot of backlash from that from like our community members. It does catch on popular in the mainstream. You know, I of my friends peers in the area who I occasionally talk to, the In Another World with a Smartphone tended to be on their lists. So while maybe not like technically a gateway title, I do think it gets into that vein of somewhat mass popularity, even if it's a story veteran fans might not appreciate or like. I can totally see the younger generation really getting into it, the people who are newer to anime, this being really fun for them. So, I mean, I like I said, I would recommend it to someone who's of a younger age, probably newer to anime, but amongst my veteran friends, probably not, especially if I knew their tastes. If I had veteran friends who are like me and just love these stories, then yes, I would recommend it for it.
Yeah, I couldn't recommend this to any of my friends who do watch anime because either one, I think if they would have liked it, they would have already seen it or been watching it. But if they haven't, I don't think this is something that they would probably be wanting to pick up.
Yeah, so like I think like sorry not to cut you off, but like I was saying, I think if your peer group was like late teens, then awesome. But like when you start approaching like I don't know, should I say I don't know if not so much young adult anymore, it becomes harder to recommend. So.
Yeah.
Which is where eventually a lot of the modern day fans are going to end up as well. So
If anything, I say read the book. It's only what, like $7? $7 on Google.
I'll buy the Blu-ray for $60. Support the anime industry, not
Truth be told,
not anime industry.
Truth be told, I did buy the light novel first volume, and I still haven't read it. But yeah, overall, I mean, I was able to watch all of it. So
yeah, like
I
don't think
I
there's
watched the smartphone one. So what does that say about me? I even read that book, and that book was terrible too. I think there's something wrong with me. Let's just go on to the new title, the other title. Hakata Tonkatsu Ramens.
Hakata Tonkatsu or Tonkotsu, sorry, ramens.
Tonkotsu Ramens. So this is about ramen shops where you go around eating ramen everywhere.
No.
Oh.
It's actually, no joke, even though that's not the premise of the show, the name of a baseball team. That is their team name. So this was actually a show I was quite impressed by, and it's something that I actually gravitated towards, like the release cycle of any week. If I was starting to fall behind, I typically hit this one before a lot of my other backlog. It kind of took me by surprise. And I'm not saying like it's super original in anyone. This is the series that is about a series of not a series, a city of like hitmen, killers, like integrated into society, and like there's so many of them, I guess the police can't really deal with it. But it's kind of odd because if you look at one of the main characters whose name is Lin, he has like a Chinese last name because he's a Chinese descent. It's this one series where you're going to watch it and you're going to think one of the two protagonists is totally a chick and it's just a dude with long hair who wears a skirt. Like his serial killer tactic is to be mistaken as a girl, like not disguising his voice. The guy just talks like totally as a dude the whole time. Very rarely for a disguise will he actually lighten his voice to try to sell the concept of I can totally be mistaken for female. But I really looked forward to this one because of the type of stories that it would kind of weave throughout its 12 episodes. And, you know, the baseball thing was kind of an inside joke, so it actually kind of made me enjoy the show even more. But aside from a city of, like, hitmen killers, there's, you know, a mafia in there that usually employs these killers. And there's, because the mafia has a turf war with, like, various other gangs and mafias, it's,
Sorry for interrupting you. We're having that
turnover rate of not only just hitmen, but who you are aligned with. Like, you can get backstabbed really easily in this city, and that would be the end of it for you. But that's not technically the story it focuses on. Although not as comical as something like Lupin the Third, that's largely how it's set up. It's very episodic, and although like there's a couple arcs that span a few episodes here and there, largely you pretty much get a single episode that tells a complete story using its cast of hitmen, hackers, plastic surgeons, and there's like another profession in the city, and it's like a form of revenge, but it's if somebody does something to you, there's literally a professional organization that will accept a job to return the favor in the same way to whoever, you know, did a wrong to you. And I forget if what they were specifically referred to as, but you're quickly introduced into this cast of, as I said, hitman, a plastic surgeon, and a hacker who all look out for each other as kind of a niche group and operate like, pulling a few strings here and there in the city. They got some really good connections, but they're by not means controlling the city at the same time. And I really just liked watching the script probably wasn't top notch, but entertaining enough for the character cast that it had. And something that really actually kind of got me every time was the outro of this thing. There's a song called "Dirty Bullet," which it was just instrumental. Like it's almost like not like a Lupin the Third interlude minus the Lupin the Third. It just has this instrument set that really blends into the story. They use it as I think they rearranged it at one point near the end and integrated it as like an insert tune. And I really liked the way they did that, and I always liked listening to it as an outro. Like when a series has a tune that you really like, and it's a show that you like well enough, it always just goes well together. So yeah, it's weird. It's got a Joshi Kosei looking character who's totally a dude. So kind of a Lupin the Third type story, except around theft and like ultimately being a thief. It's about contract killing. So not as comical, but a story that I like nonetheless. Like, it actually surprised me how much I actually ended up enjoying this one.
I couldn't get into it after the first, I think, 2 episodes. So
Understandable.
But I'm gonna give it another try if I have some time. I've been doing a lot of really bad things, like rewatching a lot of old anime shows. I should start finishing some of these newer ones.
Yeah, the funny thing is, it's got a slightly better score than the other one that I intensely reviewed, which was that Coco one. It's ranked higher, but is not as popular. So, like, of the user base who are rating it, they're giving it better ratings than Coco, and this one's a 7.5. So, out of people who avoided it, who've watched it, and assumably have enjoyed it. I'm not sure how many people are like low star reviewing it because I couldn't get into the first few episodes, but it looks like there's less of those, I'm guessing, in the reviews. So,
all right.
But yeah, there's a like an origin story of the characters near the end, and it's totally a lot like almost like Messiah towards the end when it comes to some characters' origin stories, which it kind of got dark then, which it ultimately was always a little bit, because it had to do with like how people were going to go about offing somebody on their list. But it got into the tough. There's a lot at play with the characters. They go through, at least our main protagonist. They really pin a lot of drama on him. The other backstory of the other characters aren't as well established, but like one of the hooks was early in the episodes, he was a contract killer because he was trying to earn a bunch of money to buy out and save his sister, who was also like sold into slavery like him, but not into, and like illegal slavery, not like legalized slavery. He got sent down that kind of like the Grisaya route with his origin story. She got, because she's actually a girl, into some other dingy, not overall positive story of society. And in the process of trying to buy this person out, she literally passes away in an instant right when he gets the funds to make this happen. And you haven't heard of his origin story yet. So like they don't flesh out the characters as much as this, like, really the main protagonist, but it really centers around Rin and Banba, as he was called, like the two killers who kind of look out for each other amongst the main cast of, all their friends who are also on this baseball team. Like, the baseball team is literally also this gang of people who all look out for each other in this messed up city. So it was a nice tale to me. I liked it.
What was that?
Sisters. I can close the door, but I left it open so I could, like, actually cater to the dog whenever he needed anything, because I'm kind of somewhat dog sitting. They could actually kind of take care of it. Let me close that door. They got him. Give me a moment.
Well, I'm just gonna announce our new title while you do that. Coming up next after Hakata Tonkatsu Ramens, we got Beatless, which was on Amazon Prime. Could have watched it streaming there. I was really excited for Beatless because I like Red Juice, the artist, and I heard that he was going to be working on this as well. So I was really excited, but unfortunately the show disappointed me. It wasn't what I was expecting, so
I actually found out I might have been causing, like, a feedback issue, because for some reason my headphones and speakers were both firing.
it wasn't that bad. I was just talking about how disappointed I was with Beatless.
Well, yeah.
I was expecting more, but I don't know.
But you don't know.
Yeah, like I wanted more, but I don't know what I would have wanted. It was just lacking something to me that it just couldn't hold me in after the first 3 episodes.
For what it was, it had a really slow, like, it had a pretty big pacing issue telling its initial story. I do agree with that. And I kind of wanted to talk about it from a halfway point here, because it is something that I'm now a little bit more interested in than I was initially. Let's just do it this way. So this is the story set in the future where AIs are becoming more intelligent than people, and designing better robots. And the story has developed in such a way where we're kind of at a point where AI is about to surpass human intelligence. Like, AI is designing systems that humans already fundamentally don't understand and aren't making themselves. But you kind of hit the society point where there's almost this turning point of, are robots becoming too smart? Are they going to be able to not replace humans, but be better than humans? And then where will you be? So it took its sweet time getting here, but we're introduced to a story in which 4 or 5 of these androids that were super developed by AI escape from a research facility and get out into society. And each one of them has their own purpose. There's like a scene near the episode, I want to say like 7 or 8 mark, where it has each of the androids going like, I will advance this aspect of society. I will advance this. I will advance that. Now it kind of solidified its role a little bit. But for some strange reason, only one of the androids seems allied to an actual human. The others don't necessarily care about harming people, which is kind of like the weird thing, because it doesn't really take its time to explain why. Only there's like one android who's like in defense of everything. and the others are so single-mindedly hell-bent on doing their own, almost short-minded objective. But yeah, like, I know what you mean. The designs, if you like look up art for this thing, the anime does not like live up to the art of Red Juice, but I've slowly come to like the story that it's saying. You know, my issue with it in the early startup was it looked like it was trying to be the next Showbits / Plastic Memories. And while it does have an element of that, I'm not trying to say it completely ignores elements of Plastic Memory / Showbits. It is telling this much more action-oriented story with a lot of, not like, well, kind of actually physical violence along the way. So, yeah.
Honestly, I think this show just couldn't hold up. And Plastic Memories, if anything, is what I would highly recommend, especially for style.
Well, yeah, but like those shows were vehicles for drama. The story that they told was drama. This show is getting into, I mean, like, you know, I don't want to tie in titles that are really popular to try to like have this thing ride on those coattails, but the society in this world is a little bit closer to kind of like Jikan no Eve, where androids in Jikan no Eve had to have like this light halo above their head signifying that they were androids because they would look like people to such an extent that we would mistake them for people if there wasn't an obvious tell. And where the story of Jikan no Eve deviated was like you would go into this cafe where the cafe rule made it so that the robots had to turn their halos off and you no longer knew who was a robot or a human. And that issue is largely at play here. There are some characters who this series calls it an analog hack, which is no big deal, but an analog hack is simply when you mistake an android for a person. And that's causing factions of society, people who are really against robot assistants, like alongside humans. Like they just kind of want to do away with robots and go back to humans having to do everything for themselves. And there's a society that doesn't mind the android help, but it's like it's really delicate in the issue that it's trying to tell right now because it's very ambiguous. It's really not clearly depicting. I don't think it's trying to be a piece about the acceptance of anything. I just think it's using it as a vehicle to move along its story of super advanced robots, you know, battle scenes, action, super tech, what happens when somebody likes a machine. All kind of blended together in the story, and that's what Beatless is.
Huh. Is this a finished season or?
No, it's still ongoing. So like it was halfway through. Like we're at a kind of a halfway point at this time. It's like a 2 core for its first season, or maybe even 3 and beyond. But I'm assuming just a 2.
Well, just keep us notified if any changes happen. If we should check it out.
Yeah, like I can't even tell you where it wants to end up right now. I will say that as much we're saying, it's not super popular. Of the people who are rating it, it's getting a very meek score of about 6 because of all of what it's trying to accomplish at once. And it was actually kind of interesting because in the one of the more recent episodes, so like that would have been 12, I think, maybe 13, we actually learned that there is a city where when people were basically couldn't afford their robot anymore, or just, you know, somebody died and nobody could inherit it, or whatever the issue of a robot becoming ownerless, there was a company who would recycle them. And they were recycled not in like a plastic memories way, but they would be grafted to the city where they would be given like a coprocessor accessory, which would like react with another cloudy based server that would give them more human characteristics. And they were actually conducting city experiments with, like, the whole city was all Android, but the ones with the hair accessories could exhibit human like properties. Like there was a master computer giving them a human role, and the other robots had to assist the human acting ones. And one of the interesting things, just to try to draw some interest back into this, they would run social experiments to try to figure out how humans would actually react to robots doing certain things. And although one of the androids kind of meddled in this really cool sounding social experiment and caused like almost an android zombie episode, they were going to conduct an experiment about what happened when a terrorist attack happened, when you have android helpers integrated into society. Like, you know, a terrorist attack breaks out in the cities. What are the androids going to do in response? Like, how can they recognize terrorism? Will they just help people blind? Like how will the computer respond so we can better tune this to society? And that's really kind of like cemented my faith in the show a little bit more. But again, you're halfway through the core, and I don't think it's going to spend a lot of time coming up with cool stuff like that. But it did largely turn into a zombie hack attempt where, you know, zombified robots were removing the hair accessories so that the other robots can be hacked. And it was totally a weird zombie robot episode, but like the concept was really cool. And I expect, you know, probably because the creators really couldn't come up with an answer or anything of like what should be done. That's kind of like why they went that path. But it sets up some interesting premises at times, and that's like when I really draw some interest in the show. But like those really cool scenarios are few and far between. So like, will it keep that up? Will it keep like how much fun will they have with their own concept is kind of like what keeps me in the show. Much like I wanted to see the smartphone show, I kind of want to see this, what the creators do with this world that they set up.
So the only thing I could take up from this is that if it had better pacing, it would be doing a lot better.
Yeah, probably a little bit improved script, a lot less time dilly-dallying, probably a better story.
Okay, a lot of fix-ups. Let's go to the next title then. We can probably have some fun with this. I hope you put this in the list. I'm not too sure.
Yeah.
Was it Dagashikashi?
Dagashikashi Season 2.
This actually confused me a lot on Crunchyroll.
It did me too.
Because on Crunchyroll, it did show that it was a season 2. I just assumed they were just showing the first season again. I'm like, what are these guys doing? So I never really opened it up again, and then I realized, oh, it's season 2.
Yep. I just wanted to see something.
All about the Japanese sweets, snacks, and all those fun stuff. We recently got a new snack. I can't remember what it was called, but it was like the inverted Pocky, where it had the bread on the outside.
Oh, was it Payjoy or something like that? Like Pejoy?
I don't remember the name, but I love that.
I've always seen it around, and I just decided to buy it. And I was like, "Hey, this is actually a lot better than what it looks like it would be."
Yeah, Nick bought some, gave me one stick, and then I went out the next day and got like 3 big bags.
I gave you all the broken sticks too, which was like another 3.
So what about the show?
So I do think like the interesting thing here that I would have loved to bring up sooner is I do believe we had a studio change. The season 1, I believe, was Studio Feel, and I say I believe because I'm totally looking at a web page right now. And the studio credited to the second season is Tezuka Productions. A lot of the characters went through a redesign. We also changed from full episode, like 24-minute runtime on the first season, to a short for the second season. And like, the weird thing is the source is from a manga, which I haven't read, but like I think there's a lot that you can take from the interpretation of the studio from these characters, because although the art did drastically change, I believe personally, like only in the, I guess in the case of that one quirky main protagonist Hotaru, the other characters look pretty similar, but Hotaru and personality too. See, like this character who just was like single-mindedly like Candy, but like you can kind of feel her passion through her love for Candy. She was of characters, but there was something there to the personality. And in like the second season, they like threw that all away. Like the character was like just felt soulless to me. like she only existed as a vehicle to talk about Candy, and she was always given this like crazed expression. Like she no longer had this nostalgic liking of Candy. She was just this crazy fact know-it-all. Is kind of like what I took away from the early I can't talk right now. Early Hotaru. And I actually did kind of like its going down to a short factor, because like as like I was talking about with the Takunomi from earlier, when the show kind of exists to try to tell a story alongside promoting a particular product, although this one, albeit a lot more blended into you know, like what if we had a cartoon over here that went into all sorts of like snacks, went to like a baseball game, like if you ever played sports and you went to a concession stand, what you would normally see there, or like the prizes from like arcade stuff, like that's kind of like what this few cool facts, almost like in a how it's made style. Like it doesn't go through the how it's made process, but just a little history of the company or how the product came out to be. And that was really interesting to the show. And while it somewhat pulls that off in the second season, it almost becomes condensed to the point where they're selling the product a little bit more, and like having to come up with a contrived story with the characters a little bit less. So I was actually looking at I was just trying to compare some facts between these two just to see how like the general reception was. I'm thinking that a lot of people were probably felt pretty ousted by like the redesign, as I'm calling it, of Hotaru. But it seems like they are liking it a little bit better, at least so far, the second season as well. The interesting thing that happens here is like halfway through the season, Hotaru kind of disappears. The disappearance of Hotaru, whatever her last name is. And something happens to the main protagonist, what was Kokonatsu. Kokonatsu's father, which he ends up in a hospital. And Kokonatsu is in this kind of tough predicament because, you know, he wants to be a manga author that he kind of forgets about, getting lost in the daily activities of just hanging around with his friends and having to run the shop because his dad's gone. He kind of hits that crisis point of, you know, do I want to run the shop as my life, or do I not want to? And we see an introduction of a new character who's supposed to watch the shop while he's at school because he can't do that. And that just kind of drew my interest into the show even more, because it added a character who wasn't horrible. Like I appreciated the character's introduction and how they blended into the story. You know, I just like the story as a whole a lot better. But the only thing that I find negative is what they did to the Hotaru character, and I think that's just because of the studio change. Because if it's based off a manga and it's not like original content, then unless the manga went that route too, I don't know.
Was it the same voice actor? Or
Let's
maybe it
see.
changed because of that, or
Yes, same voice actor.
okay. Because that's very strange how they would change a character like that. Or
And I mean, maybe someone would feel like this, and I'm not saying like this is absolutely the character like now, but to me that's just how it felt. Like like Hotaru was very whimsical in the first season, but as I was kind of saying, you could still see that nostalgic joy about her. And in this series, she was just made to look a little more just psycho crazy, just a little bit more, alongside her like single-handed, like her love of candy and snack items and like snacky toys is still there. But it's just, like, have you watched any of it?
not the new one. I've watched the old one.
Ah, okay. So maybe if you'll check it out, and then you might be able to give me some feedback about what you think. But from some of the people.
I'll definitely check it out. It's got me interested to see how they've changed it.
Yeah, but like and as I was kind of saying, halfway through the story, Hotaru as a whole kind of disappears from the story temporarily. Well, assumably temporarily. Hard to say. It ended in such a way where not a whole lot. Like the story as a whole doesn't feel resolved. It feels like I don't think there's been like a declaration of a series 3 of this thing. As weird as that would be, but like not a whole lot of stuff is resolved. That's all I will leave it at. Like overall, as far as Kokonatsu actually setting into what he wants to do with his life, hasn't been clearly defined. So there's room for perhaps, and I don't know like what's coming out manga wise. Like I know some people can go, there's this much more content, this many more volumes has to come. I have no knowledge of that stuff. None.
All right. You ready to go to the next title?
Sure.
Which is another Amazon Prime. Which I don't think. Oh, it does kind of show up. Killing Bites. Honestly, don't know about anyone else that has watched this.
Funny thing is, Ace, who normally tags along, I think he watched this one maybe to completion.
What?
I think. I don't know if he actually finished it, but I do know he was watching it. So.
Ace. I should have been.
The one time he could be the helpful place, he's not here. No, I'm kidding. Kidding, Ace. You see this or hear about it later, whatever. But this is another one I was kind of actually somewhat surprised by, and not like in the same way of the two sci-fi ones from earlier. Killing Bites seemed like it would be another series that was largely like Freezing, where you have this mostly busty character set, mostly female based, almost Terraformers like esque tech like gimmick battling going on here. And I didn't I think I was watching it because like people were memeing it up a lot. like because moments of this anime were hitting social networks and other venues like that. I was more enticed to watch it. And while not a series that I'm against, because I don't mind watching, series like Freezing where paper clothing elements. So you probably don't want to risk leaving the screen exposed to public space because you at any moment you don't know when it's just going to get all beyond PG-13. I was pleasantly surprised by this one because, long story short, as we probably talked about in the first one, it's based around something called Killing Bites. And that's basically, there's 4 Illuminati-like organizations that exist. Each one of them are using this technology to do a surgery on someone to allow them to exhibit an animal-like trait. I think for the most part, they steered away from insects for maybe an obvious reason and tried to focus on mammals, even though like mammals was still a large part of Terraform Mars too, but not anyway. So you augment people with DNA of an animal, allowing them to pull off like a half-ish transformation in almost like a Bloody Roar style, if anyone kind of remembers that game. But probably not. That's like PS1 era. So what was the point of killing bites? It was kind of hard to say, because after the first few episodes, we come to find out, like, our character literally went through, I think, one or two fights, and then we have like a battle royale style thing, which also has like a game on top. There's a game element to a battle royale, and we're going to throw all these characters on a yacht, get them to this island, and have this happen. And it's a 4, which the scripting issues here. The gimmick of this time around is the winner of the tournament, through mostly elimination, but it's slash incapacitation. So like, if you happen to murder the other person who is a half animal, then they're out of the running, obviously. But you don't technically have to kill them. Incapacitating them would knock them out of the tournament just fine. But the single-handed winner of this tournament, whoever one of the 4 Illuminati-like merchant groups that person kind of belonged to, would gain full rights to this technology and be able to integrate it to society, like literally go public with being able to offer the public at large this surgery. And okay, so like, what was the tournament? Like, what were the stakes of the first tournament? It doesn't matter. They didn't talk about it. We just know that a previous one happened. The tournament actually did make things rather interesting, though, because like I said, while there was about 2 in-city fights that we witnessed before this thing kicked off, it really quickened the pace, like near the half-core toward the end, because on this Battle Royale island, characters were being like quickly introduced and fights were quickly happening. And there's just like a lot going on and not a lot to be upset with. It wasn't taking its time telling anything anymore. So like, the second half of this show is pretty darn action-packed, even like though it might have a moment of heavy talking here and there. I'm not promising like action from every episode. It's just, there was that fighting element to it. And I will give a slight bit of a spoiler. What I didn't expect from the series, the pleasant surprise number 2, was they try to kill one of the main protagonists near the end. Now that was a big spoiler, so like, spoiler alert for anyone wanting to finish this or watch the story to completion just from hearing of it here. They kill one of the 2 protagonists. They show literally this biological product surgery integrating into society. Like, I think they did one of those, we're going to construct an artificial island for all these half people, half animals to live on, and like get away from the society that might initially oust them. Like, they could, just go live in their own city. And seemingly killing bites was still a thing. Like, it was this tournament, and it's like, it just had this total season 2 drop. It's like, this is just a 12-episode anime. It's obviously setting up for an absolute second season, which I wasn't initially anticipating, but like, we totally have this 12th episode that, this company won, the technology got into the hands of everybody, the people who were really into this have their own island. Killing bites is still a thing. Like, with the mortality rate question mark, like, is that public? Like, is this new Killing Bites maybe a little bit more safe because like they try to like WWE style prevent fatalities as much as possible? Like what is going on? But like, you don't know yet, because it was obviously just not like a cash grab or anything, but just an obvious declaration of the story ain't over. It was introducing new characters, the younger characters who were getting into the Killing Bite tournaments, and I was just like, whoa, that was really quick. That was a lot to grasp in the last episode that obviously just set up a continuing season. So like it was interesting because like I said, in comparison to what I believe is just ripping the main mechanic off, not saying it's the same type of story, but like Terraformars was this thing where it's telling, like, instead of like a what's supposed to be one-on-one fighting, because like Terraform Mars, you went to Mars, you're trying to fight the humanoid cockroach people, and that's why you have the half animal transformation stuff. You know, the whole premise wasn't a fight to the death / battle royale there, but it, as a vehicle to move the story along, it just kind of worked as like what initially I was impressed by. I was like, because how many shows have we seen with one-on-one fighting? You know, gosh, a lot of them.
Yeah, it's usually one-on-one fighting, but 5 of them shown at the same time.
And I mean specifically to this type of a series, like, you know, Freezing wasn't, you know, at times they were fighting the enemy, at times they had ranked matches against each other. You know, but the story was somewhat slowed because it almost had this very episodic nature. And while, you know, Killing Bites is overall just one big arc, it was just interesting to see this thing do what it did. I was like not impressed to the point where I would say people have to watch it, but like that could have been a lot worse. Like it is a little servicey, or a lot servicey. Like, I'm not trying to say it holds back on the service, but for the type of the show that it is, it could have been a lot worse. And it was actually nice to see the direction that it went, in my particular opinion.
Okay. I think we have time for one more title. What title would you like to hear? Or what title would you like to cover?
I don't know. Is there, like, between the last two there you could pick, or anything else that I've watched that's left?
Let's talk about Eerie Camp.
I think we already did.
I just mess with you.
Uh-huh.
I got this one.
It's Yuru, by the way, not Yuri.
You do. I think Yuri, all those girls.
Although there was this one H book that I came across recently. Nope.
Okay, up next we've got Toji no Miko, all about shrine maidens and all that other fun stuff.
Yeah, like, that was kind of funny. People saw shrine maidens and, you know, they were expecting maiden garb, and it's totally like schoolgirl uniform. Not Miko. So I do believe that they're gonna call this thing in English Sword Maidens, I think is the what they are translating it to, for, you know, and it fits. It kind of tells what it is, because it's a story that, again,
they call it Katana Maidens.
Katana, okay. Sword Katana, my bad. But this is another one where we're only halfway through. I actually kind of thought this was going to be like Killing Bites and be one core. I was surprised to find out that it was 2, because roughly by the 12th episode, it does complete its story of like the first kind of arc, and it continues into another story thus after. So, you know, that worked. But largely what the story revolves around is there is an entity known as Aradama, which I believe is, you know, just kind of like a demon-like entity that these sword maidens have to fight. They are, you know, the demon-esque entity of the society, and only the shrine maidens can use the special katanas, I believe they're called, which, you know, are made from a special metal that once you drain all the like impurities off, it makes this Aradama ore thing. I don't know, but the whole point is they use the katanas to slay the Aradama enemies. And it kind of intrigued me because it had the story of, lots of swords, not the greatest, but like the combat, it's a series that you can kind of tell whose job it was to tell the 2D story and to do the 3D anime fighting. The characters, when fighting, will usually adopt a white aura around themselves, which is, like, when we transition from 2D animation to 3D model. And it's noticeable there, but not horrible. It just enables them to make some nicer choreography without having like a lot of overhead as far as art, but you do sacrifice just a little bit in art, but it also makes the characters more dynamic, like when it comes to hair movements and other stuff. Like we've had this talk of why they do this stuff before. That's really not what I wanted to say, but in the first half of the story, we come to find out that while they're having a tournament, to I guess decide their rankings on who's stronger than who, one of the katana maidens attacks the head honcho maiden of like the whole organization, who isn't like school age like the rest of them. She's a full-grown adult, and she quickly gets ousted by the society because she just turned traitor and attacked the head honcho. And the whole kind of question was why, which is like, because like that was episode 1 and 2, like this attack happened then. And that was kind of, I forget if it was all within episode 1. It was probably all within episode 1. And that was enough of a hook for me to kind of want to know the story. Like, why did this person turn traitor? Turns out, kind of a spoiler, not recommending you watch the show or not after hearing this, but the things that they fight, called the Aradama, there was a crisis in, like, when the head honcho was like schoolgirl aged, that like the biggest known outbreak, the highest concentration of an Aradama happened, and this being is somewhat impossible to fight, and typically the only way to take it down is to literally have a sacrifice. One person has to drag it to like the depths of hell. Oh, yeah, whenever they do their white aura thing, like they get a slight bullet time speed gain. Like they never really bullet time the effect, but the whole premise is they can move a lot faster. They're normally seen as like kind of teleporting or swiftly moving to the screen a lot faster than would normally be possible. And the explanation is like you're kind of like, I don't know, like merging to the dimension of the afterlife and like getting this like time morphed effect, where the cool concept there was like anytime anyone slashed a character and they like lost an arm with the white aura, that was like an after image. Like upon disengaging the aura, they kind of like were as they were before the aura was engaged. Like there was some mechanic polishing there, but as I was saying, the way to deal with this being was to drag it to the furthest depth of hell and stay there with it, thus trapping it, I guess, forever, or at least for a while longer. Apparently, that didn't quite work out well this time, and the character who turned traitor knows the secret of the head honcho. Literally is what they fight, is the Aradama being itself. Like, the one controlling all the sword maidens is the evil entity itself. So in an attempt to take it down, it's stronger than her. She can't kill it. And now she's being targeted by the whole organization. And our protagonist, kind of a whimsical, happy-go-lucky character, she's kind of a nice protagonist. She's really into the katana fu of everybody. She likes to know their styles, has really good reflexes, has a lot of style knowledge, so she can usually identify someone's style by just watching them fight for a little bit. She kind of goes along with this other character because something's not sitting right with her, and the story explaining what I just told you ensues from there. But that was like the first core of the episode. That got resolved, and I just don't want to give too many spoilers to try to draw some enticement to the story. And it's like, okay, so what are we going to do from core number 2 on? Like, where does the story go from there now that it was resolved? And I'm still early into that right now myself, but you know, it's a nice enough of the pickup story where you come to find out like what the aftermath of dealing with the final boss of like the final big bad boss of any video game is. Like, were you able to quell it completely, blah de blah? And you know, that's where the story is attempting to explain by now. I was just kind of taken aback that it was going to be a 2 core right off the bat, because no one, like, not a lot of people seemed interested in it, you know? A lot of people were drawn in by Miko, saw no Miko, and bailed. And it's just like, oh, okay. 2 core series that has like mediocre popularity. All right then. I mean, I've seen that time and time and again, but
poor Mikos. You've been forgotten. I don't know.
But I think on that hand, it is somewhat unique in that I don't know if it would be like what it's trying to be at like the tag level, like what genre, who is it trying to appeal to? That one I'm even more lost on, because the cast is heavily female. So it's like, while it seems like it could be like one of those like cell phone games, which it's not. I'm just saying, like, cell phone games tend to be made into animes that have high amounts of female cast. Like the although it wasn't cell phone, it was browser, the Ship Musume one, and you know, I could name a bunch of them off my hand. I'm just not going to. But typically, that type of a game will have a type of a cast like this, and that's supposed to be the endorsement. It's like, I wonder what's going on here, because, you know, as a young teenage story, it's all right. It's not like really shonen, but like, is it supposed to be shoujo without all the like the love stuff? Like, you know, like not a non-love story show. Like what is it trying to be? I have no clue.
So who would you say this is recommended for? Like, who would you recommend it to?
Probably, again, the younger generation. I think it's, for me, what I could compare it to maybe from like my personal history is it might entice someone who's new to anime in the way that like Gare did for us, where Gare is a little bit darker, but at the same time, like it's kind of like fits right into that type of a story, just like with the high cast of schoolgirls. So like, you know, we probably wouldn't get into that stuff as likely anymore, but for someone who is newer to anime, it could like totally fulfill that type of, if you probably personally know like the time frame I'm getting at here, as far as like how old the general age of anime watchers that Gare attracted at the time, versus like, you know, is it just the new age Gare, just less dark, more cookie cutter, and you know.
So seinen type.
No, well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know. As far as like asking in the site to provide me the tags, and like sometimes you can gain some insight, all it says is action and fantasy. Like, it doesn't get into shonen, seinen, or what's the other one? Shoujo.
I guess we'll see later. Jose, Kose.
Yeah, probably not Jose.
Check out this new Jose Kose title.
Well,
Miko,
Joshi
Miko.
Kose, sure, but yeah, like I said, I don't know who to technically recommend it to, but I do think for like anyone in Japan who, like, whatever time slot it's running in, it's, you know, if it caught them with that episode 1 gimmick, assumably a younger generation is watching it. How young, I just can't quite say. Like, not quite maybe grade school. I don't know. High school, probably not. Hard to say.
Okay.
But that's just why I was confused by it. Like, it doesn't fit into a nice vein. It's a 2-core that like didn't need to continue but did. Like, they could have seen how it would have done from its first season alone to decide season. Like, it was kind of an oddball to me for that reason. Like, I just remember being shocked when I was looking up at the list. I think it was when I was looking up the list to note what was actually ended did I learn that it was a 2-core. Or maybe in our first sheet of talking about it, I realized it. I have no clue, but I was like, really, this?
Well, that's it for anime talk of the titles we're going to be discussing. I'll do some shameless call-outs for Crunchyroll. Check out that new game they got going on, Danmachi. I'll admit, I've been spending quite a bit of time playing that. And then Nick actually introduced me to Sword Art Online's got a new game out there too for the phone.
Yeah, I haven't played it as much as you played Danmachi. Like, mostly because I've been so swamped with catching up with all I'm going to be watching this season in particular. But yeah,
Danmachi you can play without playing, really.
Yeah, so well, you do your spiel first, and I'll do mine. How's that?
You could do yours. I mean, there's not much I have to say about Danmachi. It's just a big file. That's the biggest complaint about everyone. It's like over 3 gigs.
Yeah, I don't know how big the Sword Art one is, but Sword Art released a game just before the Danmachi one. So, like, days before it. It's still really new. It was Sword Art Online Integral Factor, and it essentially makes it's a story-driven MMO, but on the cell phone. And I've seen stuff like that before, where you design an avatar, run around on a map, get missions, fight enemies that are specifically in places on the map, and just progress your story. But what's specific to this one is you design your avatar, as I said, and it tries to blend you into the story that is the initial season 1 Sword Art Online. You're trying the game as a beta tester. You're finding out what happens when the game officially launches. And it's kind of funny because the game lets you design your avatar, and then I think they let you change it whenever you want, but they totally had that moment where they're like, hey, now that you're trapped inside the game, not really, because a smartphone game doesn't work, do you want to change your character's appearance for the people who had to go? And when you physically look at the mirror, they try to integrate that for people to, it's kind of funny because it's like, I know people are going to ignore that because they want the character, but I wonder how many people would actually have designed a character and then, true to the series, try to make a character that looked like themselves. Like, I'm sure there are people out there who have done it. I just don't know how many, because I didn't.
I didn't either.
But it's interesting because it creates a story NPC that it doesn't give you control of, but it always kind of tags along with you because the combat involves at least 2 people. If you make a party, your story-driven NPCs leave, and you're just a group of friends. But that's kind of where this game falls apart, is it's kind of hectic to, like, if you meet someone in the game and you naturally play at the same times, you can kind of play alongside them. But bringing your friends into this game is going to be a little bit hard because, like, as you hit a higher level, 9, 10, 20, whatever you hit, 50 some, you're probably 80 some in your game now, maybe 70, 60 some. But you kind of have to tag along with the least common denominator, like the character who's weakest, do their stories until they're maybe caught up to a certain extent, because I don't know how well they can tag along with you and survive. Assumably, permanent death isn't a thing in this game. I mean, in the early level 10, which is where I reach, nothing's hard enough to take your health bar down to 0, but I'm sure it doesn't end your character progressment and permanently delete it in a permadeath fashion. One of the interesting things, though, is when you play in a party, if somebody loses all their health bar, there's kind of like one of those like first-person shooter or third-person shooter mechanics where they get like into this hurt state, and you can run over and like do the revive, like bring them back up to minimum health and like have them heal up from there. So apparently that's I guess not doable in solo play, but again, in the early levels, there's nothing challenging enough to really take you down that low. But like, if I were to try to play with my friends, we'd all pretty much have to be the same level. If one guy got ahead, then you're going to have him coming down to join your group and do all the load. Like it's just kind of messy when you have that kind of a progression and it comes to friend play. I think to somewhat relieve this, they do events where like there's an event map. So like assumably you could load in with your friend and run through the event map and get event map resources to get like in-game stuff. And that might alleviate that issue somewhat, but it's just kind of hard to find the time to sync up with your friends. The in-game messaging interface when you should be fighting is slow. Like I'm sure many people would prefer to start like a VoIP, like Hangouts, Discord, whatever voice chat session to actually feel like you're in a similar room to someone, like real-time communication verbally instead of having to go through their interface. But like it's a nice way to experience the story, like especially of people who are diehard fans of the show. That's just not me. So because I'm going to be watching so much anime, I'm probably going to abandon this thing low level. If I had more time, I wouldn't mind playing it. But I do personally have the issue of I don't know who I would play it alongside with. Like I'd kind of have to maybe naturally team up with like a random group in game, maybe not permanent friend them because I don't know if I'll ever see them. Like it's just got that kind of an issue, like a lot of smartphone app games, if you have friends, they can usually help you out in some way. If someone was a really high level, they can assist you like in your personal map progression because like the gameplay is not team based. But like that's just a core issue of this style of game, in my opinion, when it comes to friend play. If you happen to play at the same time all the time, then it won't be an issue.
For Don Machi, that new game that came out, the biggest complaint I think for everyone was its files too large. But I think it's because it's fully voiced. All the dialogues have full voice going through, and there's also a few little clips in there that go on.
Sorry, not to cut you off, but I realized I forgot to explain a really important part of the review I just kind of gave.
But with Don Machi, it's very easy. I would say they got an auto walk function that automatically progresses the characters through the map. It's also got an auto battle, which isn't the smartest thing, but if you get your characters high enough, you can just push that button and it'll go through it by itself, so you don't have to watch it. It's pretty easy for me at work. I just hit start quest, let it go, do something, come back, I'm done, and then start the next one, so it's not too bad. Also, because it's pretty new, they got a lot of promotions going on, so that's the only reason why I was getting into Danmachi.
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend that's going to get started into it because he quit Fate Go after he spent so much to try to did it.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to get into with this game. So, like, how does it exist? While on one note, I do want to say that I am kind of excited about Crunchyroll developing a gaming division. While these games are usually highly lucrative for their developers, Crunchyroll, I think, could use that assistance greatly. I don't know like what their current profit margins like, but having a game like this under their belt might help them out enough to really, just just develop them as a company. And as a gaming division, they might localize a lot more other games that Japan's getting so that we have even more access to anime-based cell phone app games. because like we're always probably a little bit bitter about hearing all of what Japan gets and we don't, but I mean, you know, they are like it makes sense. A lot of work for us, for them it's native, just stuff. One thing though, I think because like Bandai or somebody does the Sword Art one, it's so I talked about, you know, team skills like with the NPC, but it's how does like how does the gacha system work is what I didn't discuss. So how the gacha system works is you do a character gacha like you normally would in any series, and you get the characters that you get in the game are actually skills. You can use 4 skills on your screen at any time, and they are according to the character. There's like 4 or 5 weapon types in this game: lance, sword, like one-handed, rapier, hammer / mace. I think they're in the same vein, and shield. And the characters who predominantly use those things, like Asuna with the rapier, I don't know if Kirito, like he's technically dual wield, but I don't think they're going to incorporate that into the game. Because Asuna and Kirito are running around on the map, not alongside you, but as story progression elements. So like they're characters you talk to sometimes, and you get like the static option of how to control your dialogue in like ways that don't really impact the story. Like they're like, hey, what do you want to do? And like both choices lead to the same way, but do you want to be nice about it or not nice about? Like, you know, what attitude do you want to spin on this option that's not going to impact gameplay? But the gotchas are literally like skills. So like when you go to attack an enemy, like aside from your generic attack, you have like the powerful attacks, and that's what you get out of the gotcha system. And you have to like earn in-game items to actually level up your skills, which I don't initially like because I usually am like a fan of using them, just makes experience happen innately in them. But you know, that's an argument for another day. So like you kind of get a luck of a draw. Like if you get a really good like 4-star Asuna rapier skill, then you're probably going to choose rapier weapons on your main characters, and the more you use like rapier, and like you have like a weapon proficiency level by using the weapon, you get weapon exp, and that kind of helps like lock your role into your character. But it's all kind of weird, like because like on my first gacha, I think I got like a rare Asuna and I think a Lizbeth, which I usually am a Lizbeth fan, but so it's like, okay, so if I like with my skill point allocation, because you have a total you can't exceed the threshold of, as you level up, it'll let you have a lot more powerful skills alongside each other. But initially when you pull rare skills, it becomes kind of hard because you only have like the points to really fit the one skill in, and then you're like at your cap. So until you level up to get other dinky skills in there, because like you want your 4-star rarity thing in there. But it's like by luck of the draw, you kind of get, you know, I'm rapier and mace on my first character I ever built in this game. I probably won't build another one. If I draw rarer stuff, I might want to try to change that later on. And there is a weapons triangle at play here. Like there are lunging weapons, slashing weapons, and smash weapons. And you know, there's a small like enemy weakness chart, and it's kind of weird because like it seems like a fun element because like, you know, your friends can kind of cover your weaknesses if you happen to get the right skills. Like you can skill build is what I'm trying to say. Like you don't ever have to have one loadout. You can change it on the fly and kind of like match like whatever map you're going. Like I like this element, but I don't like it at the same time. It was interesting to see how they did it because I kind of had a question of like, what's this gotcha system going to be like? I felt that I had to talk about it just a little bit. I omitted it in my initial 2 cents.
Well, be sure to check out those games, I guess. I don't know. Whoever's watching this or watches this later, let us know if there's any other fun games coming out for the Android or the iTunes or something like that.
iOS.
iOS.
It's usually what the other ones are called.
Yeah, iOS. I don't know much about Apple. Sorry. But yeah, let us know about any other really fun anime games or based. But I think that's it for today. Join us probably not next week, the week after. We should be doing the startup reviews of the spring season, right?
Sure.
Post that at Anime Talk on Google Plus, and be sure to join us then. All right. Bye-bye. Uh-oh.
What? Can I not log out?
No, I almost closed the whole thing.